In order to go to prison, this 18-year-old high school student actually kidnapped the President of the United States in front of 100,000 agents. Facing absolute power, the president, who was invited to have tea, was powerless to resist and could only agree to the boy's request. Send him to the most cruel prison, the Black Pentagon. This high school student is none other than Baki Hanma. Not only are the tendons all over his body very muscular, but after a series of inspections with precision instruments, he finally found the man who could not be locked up. Every 10 meters here, there is an encrypted acrylic wall with the most vicious criminals on both sides. When the prison guard opened the last door, he was completely shocked by the scene in front of him. This is not a prison at all. Like a high-end private club, when he opened the front door of the club, he could see the man he missed.
Mr. Baki.
Can't believe this is a prison cell. The luxurious decoration here is comparable to the residences of princes and nobles. Oliva immediately showed the purpose of her arrival. Oliva told Baki that there were 4,071 extremely evil people gathered in this prison, and 4,170 people wanted to kill him every day. As a new boxer who had just entered the professional competition, how could he fight the world champion in his first match? But Baki suddenly smiled, stood up, and stepped on the coffee table as he said. Everyone saw him resting. Oliva told Baki that he would fight here next week. His opponent was the second strongest person in the prison and then arranged Baki to be in the same cell as that person. Suddenly, a bald, muscular man stood up. This man turned out to be Iron Man Mike, a former world boxing champion. He whispered the rules here to Baki for fear of disturbing others and then told Baki carefully. At this time, a hand patted Mike, and it turned out to be a thin old man. He asked Mike to stop talking and go to bed quickly so as not to disturb Mr. Second. Suddenly, a very thick 1.8-meter limb stretched out from the bed next to him. When he woke up the next day and looked at the person in front of him in shock. This was a big man who was a head taller than before. He was at least 2 meters tall and had 5 pointed teeth. The next second, the big man walked to the bathroom door and greeted him respectfully. As soon as the door opened, a man in a headscarf came out of it.
Good morning, Mr. Baki.
Looking at the person across from him in disbelief, after knowing that this was the second strongest person in the prison, the tray's momentum began to soar, and his whole body became excited. At this time, the prison guard shouted, interrupting the early release time of the two people. Every morning, everyone reported that they were insulted by the prison guard at the door of the cell. Except for this second man, he never obeyed the prison discipline. He put his hand on the prison guard's shoulder and put out all the cigarettes in front of him. At breakfast, he was the only one among more than 1,000 prisoners who could eat fried eggs. He suddenly stood up and walked towards the prison guard.
The
prison guard was frightened and trembling. At this moment, a fly flew over his head. The second man flicked his gun and blocked the fly with the muzzle. For a man who could scare the prison guard, there were still people who wanted to challenge him. The man in front of him was once a sumo wrestler in the land of Sakura. After entering the world of mixed martial arts, he managed to win the championship title in just a few matches. He was not satisfied with Mr. Er's second place and felt that he should be ranked first. Then he broke an iron spoon into a fork with his bare hands. The second man smiled lightly and took out his spoon as well. The spoon bounced in his hand like jelly and turned red.
ほら、こんなに柔らかい。くにゃくにゃだ。
おい。
ね?
The sumo man was stunned. He overturned the vegetable soup on the table and poured it on the face of the second master. The prison guard quickly took out his gun and pointed it at him, but was stopped by the second man, and the sumo man officially challenged him. Master asked doubtfully, "What good is defeating me to you?" The sumo man said that he also wanted to add an omelette to his breakfast, so the second man took the prison guard's gun, then put it in the sumo man's hand, and then kicked him. When the sumo wrestler appeared, he would be beaten to pieces. However, this matter would not end so easily. In order to convince the defeated sumo wrestler, he asked the prison guard to have a sumo wrestling match with him in the stadium, and he hugged him. The sumo wrestler weighed 300 kilograms when he hugged him. He used all his strength to lift him, but he couldn't lift him at all. Kabar's body seemed to grow on the ground. The next second, he slapped the sumo man's ear. The powerful force instantly penetrated his ears and eyes. And then, through the ruptured eardrum, as his fingers rotated, the hair entangled the cochlea that controlled balance and was gently pulled. The sumo man suddenly felt dizzy and fell uncontrollably. The sumo man was unwilling to be defeated like this. He reluctantly stood up and wanted to fight again, but fell to the ground again. Looking at the dead dog, the second man calmly walked to the prison guard, put out his cigarette and left in a cool manner. The prison guard shot and killed the second sumo wrestler for breaking into the gymnasium without permission. The second generation of a million years, but the second generation who could not be locked up. In the duel next week, he will also end the era of Oliva. At this time, the prison guard came with a stick and raised the stick to draw the blade.
この警棒ぐにゃぐにゃだ
In an instant, the tray was surrounded by 5 prison guards. The tray provoked Mr. to break the baton and get a place for a day's journey to the small black room. His hands were behind his back and his thumbs were pressed together. This was the most painful imprisonment method in the world. Late at night, the kind old man in the prison brought him dinner and personally gave him bread and water. He also asked the old man about the identity of the second man.
大統領さ。
It turns out that the country of the second lord is a remote island in South America with a population of less than 20,000. His real name is Guevara. He used to be a pirate who committed all kinds of crimes. He often stopped cruise ships at sea, boarded the ship with ropes, and robbed all the gold and silver jewelry. Suddenly, one day, Guevara found out. The current capitalists use money and power to enslave the people on the island. In the past, the islanders here lived in equality, sharing daily necessities equally, and sharing joys, sorrows and joys. But now, their income is very minimal, they are not treated equally, and even their culture is trampled on by powerful countries. So Guevara decided to fight for the independence of the island. He began to train his men to fight without using any weapons. They trained their bodies to the extreme, enough to fight with bare hands, swords, guns, bullets, and explosions. Just as he was about to declare the island's independence, President George, who was far away in the United States, couldn't sit still. He was going to send an aircraft carrier to bomb the island completely. He said, "These 20,000 people are not independent. It is a rebellion against the United States. As the largest nation, they can't tolerate it." So some advisors suggested sending troops to the island to suppress them first and exterminate everyone on the grounds of rebellion. Just as George was excited, a pair of big hands pressed on his shoulders. It turned out that the man was not only the president's personal bodyguard, but also Guevara's subordinate. He told George that they only wanted to pursue independence and did not want the United States to intervene, and that there were 2 people like him in each of the 50 states in the United States. And each of them could intercept with bare hands and seize the nuclear power plant easily. Then he turned on the TV, and Guevara appeared on the big screen. He had broken the security of the president's house and returned to the president's house with his wife. After visiting the president's family, The bodyguard told George that as long as the United States did not violate their rights, they would guarantee everyone's safety. In the end, Kaiba won the independent blade equally. I wonder why such a person was put in prison.
簡単なことさ。ここには誰がいる？そう。アメリカで一番喧嘩強え男、ビスケット・オリバーがいるのさ。
On par with George, Oliva is considered a thorn in George's side, a thorn in the flesh. As a strong man who is also bare-handed, Guevara came here just to fight Oliva. The old man told Siberia that there are 3 people in this world who can threaten a country alone. One is Yujiro Hanma, the strongest being on the surface, Oliva, the freest human on the surface, and the second is Mr. Kai. After realizing the danger, the country of Bami uses artificial satellites to monitor the 3 people around the clock. Regardless of whether they are running or fighting, as long as they move more than 4 kilometers per hour, more than half of the satellites in the country will be forced to take emergency measures to track the target. All military satellite car navigation systems will produce a deviation of 70 meters. The confinement ends after 3 days. Baki was assigned to the outdoor road roller. A half-meter-high steel plate was placed on the ground and then driven into the ground with a heavy hammer. Each blow of Baki seemed to weigh 1,000 kilograms. It only took 2 blows to embed the steel plate into the ground. Boxing champion Tyson needed 3 times to embed it. It took half a day to embed the steel plate like a toothpick. During the break, Baki congratulated Tyson, who had 1 more month before being released from prison. Tyson told Baki that the first thing he did after being released from prison was to get his gold belt back. The wish was beautiful, but the reality was cruel. The World Boxing Association has sent $2 million to the warden to Tyson so that he can't box because it will be a shame for the criminals to regain his title. In order to get rid of Tyson, the warden found a cruel sister in prison. The triplets worked together perfectly, achieving a strength of 1 + 1 greater than 3. The sister's assessment of Tyson was 3.2. He has strong athletic ability, but his muscle structure limits his explosive power, so Tyson's combat effectiveness is only 3.2 times that of ordinary men. As they talked, the 2 sisters formed a triangle formation, surrounding Tyson in the middle. They snapped their fingers to attract attention, and another person punched Tyson's face angrily and stepped forward to fight, but his feet attacked. He stumbled and fell forward due to inertia. The person in front slapped his face hard, and then the 3 of them launched a series of attacks. Although he was very capable in one challenge, Tyson was still beaten and howled when faced with the beating of 3 people. Suddenly, one of them turned around and ran, and Tyson chased after him. He was also tired. At this time, a big foot kicked Tyson from behind the head. This kick directly caused him to kneel to the ground. He was surrounded by his sisters again. The dignity of the boxing champion was gone. Immediately, Tyson took advantage of the gap between the 3 of them. He ran to the corner and fought against the wall so that the sisters could not form a triangle formation against him. He was finally able to get into a boxing stance and use strange moves. However, the 3 brothers were not only good at sneak attacks, they also put on a boxing stance, preparing to fight Tyson head-on. In the end, Tyson was knocked down to his knees. Suddenly, one of them locked Tyson in a very strange way. Now he had no ability to fight back at all, and the other 2 started punching Tyson in the face. Half an hour later, a generation of boxing champions finally fell. The 2 brothers took out their daggers and prepared to cut Tyson's hand tendons. Suddenly, a windmill slowly rotated behind them. It turned out to be Guevara, and everyone present looked horrified after seeing him. Guevara appeared this time, obviously to defend Tyson. This time, the 3 brothers used the same triangle formation to surround Guevara in the middle. The formation formed by the 3 of them made them almost unmatched. He had completely grasped their weaknesses and wanted to completely destroy their success. Perfect tacit understanding required the 3 to have differences. Now one of them was very dirty, while the other 2 were very clean. Physically, they no longer had any understanding. The three of them angrily started kicking Guevara, but Guevara, who was lying on the ground, did not fight back at all. Seeing the bloodied Guevara brothers, they thought he was too weak. The next second, Guevara actually sat up. He walked towards the windmill and blew the air gently. The windmill began to spin, and the weather immediately changed. A violent storm swept through. He used his hand to draw on his face. Strange marks appeared. At this moment, he was like a four-toothed Luffy, full of fighting spirit. Although the sisters were afraid, they still thought that Guevara was just being mysterious. They sent one of them to the wall and surrounded him inside, forming their strongest battle formation. His back was facing the ground, and both of them looked at the person above with interest. The two took the opportunity to launch an attack, but Guevara dodged like a whirlwind, then kicked one of them until his teeth came out and fell off, and 7 holes were made. Such terrifying combat power made the eldest sister of the siblings wet her pants. At this moment, every cell in her body wanted to escape. The other person slowly slid down the wall. When Guevara wiped off the mark on his face and put his turban back on, he became cynical again. Tyson sincerely thanked him for saving his life.
何を言ってる？俺たちはルームメイトじゃないか。